But hey, seriously though, let's get into our study. You notice that we're kind of getting into kind of quick because we have a lot to cover today on such a huge topic when it comes to talking about not just mental health, but when it comes to talking about suicide, temptations, tendencies. This is a big topic that affects so many people that I want to get into the kind of early. Again, with our mental health series, we have already tackled a starting point with anxiety and a starting point with addiction, because our goal is to just simply continue to grow as a family and be in a place where people don't have to hide behind show choir masks and any kind of mask, but that they can just be able to be free to struggle with what we struggle with and then show compassion to each other and join each other on our paths. So today, as we start talking about things when it comes to the area of suicide, there's just a couple things I want to throw out to you on why it's so important that we dig into it. I remember when I first came up this way, I was a youth pastor at a church in Prospect, and my main role was the youth ministry. And I've shared with a couple this week, I remember reading a survey back at that time where they had asked all these parents, what do you think the 5 top things that kids deal with, so that we know what to study with the youth groups. And the number one thing by far, and again, this is the 90s, but I think it would still be today, the number one thing, anybody want to guess? Nope, sex. Sex. Sex was number one. When you ask the teens the top 5 things that they deal with, sex was number 3. Suicide was number 1, and the parents never even thought to put on the list. With that, it's not just when we're talking about our teens. This is massive. Suicide is the 10th overall leading cause of death in our country for all ages. When it comes to those who are 10 to 24 years old, it's the 2nd leading cause of death. 2018, there was 48,344 suicides in our country, but there was over 1,400,000 attempts during that same year. On the average, there's 129 suicides each day. Men are 3.54 times more likely than women to take their own lives. And when it comes to white men, they make up almost 70% of all suicides. It's a massive issue. And I want to just kind of dig into it quickly. Again, we're going to dive right into the videos. The videos, I think, have been great of kind of being able to explore and understand some things from those who have been there before, and then dig into it a little bit more from our community standpoint and from the Word as well. So with that, I'm going to let Owen off the hook. I promise not to bug you the rest of the day. I love you so much. And we'll dig into the video.
I'll tell you the value of these conversations. Around the world, we lose someone to suicide about every 40 seconds. In the United States, we lose about 129 people a day. It's the 10th leading cause of death in the country. Suicides are a public health issue that we really need to focus more and more attention on.
Suicide really does live in silence. I think for individuals who are feeling suicidal, they may not share that information for a lot of different reasons. Weakness comes up a lot. I don't want people to think that I'm weak, whereas reaching out for help is the strongest thing that any of us can do. To be vulnerable is to be genuine. It's to be real. It's to be human. And we forget that. And so that holds us back, and that just feeds that silence that can turn into something really bad.
I mean, we see suicide every day. I mean, literally. People who have attempted suicide and they're brought in, by family members or law enforcement. That is in every emergency department in the entire city. I mean, there's not an age group or a demographic that this does not touch. Children, adults, elderly, rich, poor, it doesn't matter where you come from. There's not a corner of the city that doesn't touch.
I've said multiple times, if you had a year and 2 months ago sat me down and said this was even a possibility, I would have looked at you and said, no, it's not. Like there's no possible way this could affect our family. 3 Boys is just busy and fun and high energy. They're all very different.
Hi, Tom. Hayden, he's my gives hugs, wants to lay down and get his back scratched. And Matthew's my senior. He needs new and fun and exciting. Maybe doesn't make the best choices all the time. He's my fun one, and totally opposite Tyler, who always made the right choice, never bucked the system, was complete rule follower, straight A. So, yes, 3 boys that I have to parent very differently. Tyler just had a much harder time with the transition to school. One day he and I were talking on the phone, and he said, Mom, I just want you to know I'm really lonely, and it's lasted for a while, so I went and started talking to a counselor. And I said, I'm so proud of you. Like, that's exactly what you should have done. I'm so proud of you for doing that. The next weekend, one of his good friends went to visit, and that night the friend called his mom and said, Mom, Tyler mentioned that he was super lonely and thinking about taking his own life. His mom called me the next morning and said, Whitney, I'm not sure how to share this with you, but last night Tyler mentioned that he wanted to take his own life, which, gosh, I'm so thankful that the friend talked to his mom and that she took it seriously and she called me. So I drove straight home, picked up Kevin, and we left for Chapel Hill to go pick him up.
If you're worried about somebody, it's really important that you have the courage to ask a very hard question. Are you thinking of suicide?
One of the greatest barriers sometimes for loved ones is the fear that maybe I'm wondering if my loved one is suicidal, but if I ask and they're not, then I'm planting an idea. Research has shown repeatedly that asking a person directly about suicide does not plant the idea or increase their risk. In fact, it can do the opposite and decrease the risk.
It could open up a very purposeful door for that person to actually feel like you care enough to ask me that question, and I need to tell you everything that's going on with me.
So I encourage folks, if you're feeling nervous about it, to practice, right? Say it out loud. Say it to your mirror if you need to. Record yourself on your phone saying it first if that helps you feel better. Accept that it's going to be a little awkward and uncomfortable for you and maybe for that other person, but see the necessity in having that conversation.
He said, Mom, I've done all the research. I think it's just severe depression because I can feel perfectly fine, like myself, happy as can be, and it's like a light switch. And it's like somebody just turns it off, and I am so low that I don't feel like myself, and I don't know what to do other than I've got to stop the pain. He was very much needed to know all the information and a problem solver.
As a society, we want to understand things that don't seem understandable to us. And we tend to want to kind of look for the 1 or 2 things that we can see on the surface. But suicide is never just caused by 1 or 2 things. There's lots of social factors, health factors, emotional factors, historical factors in a person's life that can lead them to this point.
One of the things that has really changed over the last several years is a rise in suicides in communities of color.
So it happens, I'm on the elevator with this African-American woman. She's probably late 60s. And she said, where are you going in such a hurry? I said, well, I just got a call. I'm getting ready to go and put this panel together for suicide. We're going to talk about suicide awareness. And she leaned into me and whispered. Now, ain't nobody on the elevator but us, so that was creepy. But she leans in and she says, you know, one thing about us, we might kill somebody else, but we don't kill ourselves. Like I was supposed to give her a fist bump or something. And I said, well, actually that's not true. And then about that time, the elevator stopped and we had to get off. But what I wanted to share with her is, we do die by suicide. There were more suicides among African-American children aged 10 to 14 than there were white children. 2018, stats came out, so that number is double. We are dying.
So the way I was trained to deal with any mental health issues, stresses, and things when I was growing up was shut up and do nothing. And if anything is going on in here, you better not go out there and tell nobody. What happens in this house stays in this house. So what do you want me to do to escape this? Because wasn't no going to therapy. What? That's crazy, people. We don't do that in this community. But when I went outside, there was marijuana, there was alcohol, there was crack. That's the way, to numb the pain. It's Halloween every day for us in that community because we got to put on our masks and go pretend to be something else when we're out. But a ticking time bomb because of the trauma.
You've used the word trauma a few times now. Can you just describe that? Like, what were some of the traumatic things that you were experiencing or seeing?
You really want to know? I want you to understand that you're looking at someone who's been molested, who never knew who their father was. You're looking at someone that grew up in a house that saw my mother being beaten. You're looking at someone that, at 11 years old, best friend murdered somebody. You're looking at someone that saw all type of trauma in the communities that I grew up in. I remember being on the school bus, and there was a young lady that sat right in front of me, and everybody always picked on her. So one day she didn't get on the bus, and then we found out that she had killed herself. She had to be about 10 or 11 years old. That trauma, I was numb to it. It made me think, this is normal, this is life.
What we do know now, more so than we knew 20 years ago, is the impact of trauma on mental health. For example, if you have a child who's sitting in the classroom and they can't concentrate, they can't focus, they're staring out the window all day, it's easy to decide that child has ADHD. But what if this is a child who doesn't know if they're gonna have food to eat when they get home? Or they're thinking about whether or not their dad is gonna be drunk and beat them when they get home. That's a child that's gonna feel isolated, that's a child that's gonna feel alone, and that's a child who's a candidate to be suicidal down the road if we don't intervene.
I didn't really have much hope for the future. I feel like I had no control. My father left when I was about 5, and my mother would work her butt off every single day. She was a hard-working woman, and she made sure that we were her best friends. She used to call us her gems.
What was your mom's name?
Sylvestra Ardinas, but people called her Sylvie for short.
This is my mom. Okay, hold on. Let me fix it.
I'm so amazed because until the doctor told us that she had 3 weeks to live, she was a happy woman. She smiled.
Oh, I love this one. Okay, I don't think you're ready for it. Are you ready for it? We were at the pizza place.
She was my world. And I couldn't control losing my best friend. And I started cutting myself. My friend told me she found this on the internet and a picture off of a social media website, and she said, it actually works. I know it might be sort of a bad thing, but this works. And I actually lost that friend. It's hard to say her name, so I won't. And she saw no point of a future either.
At the end of the day, suicide prevention, suicide awareness, it really is about saving lives. So I think it starts with having conversation with kids at an early age and letting them know that suicide is real, that when they're feeling depressed or when they're feeling angry or when they're feeling isolated or feeling anxious, there's nothing wrong with those feelings, but they need to really have a venue to be able to talk about those things.
We really need to focus a lot on not just gatekeeping, so stopping somebody when they reach the point that they're suicidal, but more of an upstream approach, like what skills, what resiliencies, and protective factors can we build in to the fabric of our society that prevents somebody from even reaching that point. Strong social connections, a strong faith, a willingness to seek help, also just kind of emotional skills. Folks are not taught how to cope with emotion or that they even need to cope with emotions.
What does this look like potentially when someone is struggling with suicide? Are they withdrawing from their friends, taking risks that weren't typically there? Maybe, I'm drinking or using drugs. Those are some precursors that things aren't going well. And then what we're asking people to do is pay attention and recognize those things, and then ask a very specific question. Are you thinking of suicide? Are you thinking you want to hurt yourself? And then where do we go from there? You're not just going to send them off. So be present, help walk that journey with somebody so they're not alone.
So Kevin and I were taking turns spending the weeks with Tyler up at college, and I left on a Friday, and Kevin was planning to go up on Saturday morning, and so it was only one night that Tyler was going to be alone in his dorm room.
So how did you feel leaving Tyler that day?
You know, I really felt good, actually. I felt like he was in such a good place. And honestly, he thought he was too. And he was really looking forward to having movie night at Katie's house. And there was a swim party the next night that he had gotten, you know, a fun white elephant gift. So I was excited driving back, seeing how well he was doing, how well I thought he was doing. I think that he had every intention when I left him of being there the next day. But I think when he hit that low that night and the loneliness crept in, he realized that this was a problem he couldn't solve. So he did write us a letter. He said he didn't want to burden us, that he really didn't think that he could be fixed. And little does he know, we would have done anything in the world. But I just don't think he saw that.
We know that in a moment of becoming more and more suicidal, thinking narrows. The person's ability to kind of problem solve becomes greatly diminished. Their ability to kind of reason through things becomes diminished. And so options get smaller and smaller and smaller. It's not that they just want to die, it's that they don't see a way to live.
It's feeling like there's this huge fog all around you. You can't see things the way that other people see them. It really feels like this is it. This is all that I have. I've betrayed people. I haven't lived up to their expectations. I haven't lived up to my own expectations. There is no world in which I will ever be happy or successful or feel joy again. And I don't want to be a burden to other people because I'm clearly bringing everybody else down, and I have got to remove myself.
I will never fully understand it because I haven't lived it. But I think the thing that I can wrap my head around is that it takes someone being in a lot of pain, whether it's physical or emotional, to feel like death is preferable to living another minute with what you're going through.
Crack cocaine. I was selling crack cocaine. And now I got all of this money, and I feel like I'm growing up in this neighborhood, and I'm becoming a known street pharmacist for people's pain and trauma. And it just seemed like everything was just so illusionary, if that's a word, good. And then all of a sudden, one day I was going to my grandmother's house. My little brother was in the back playing Sega Genesis. My grandmother was in her bedroom watching The Guiding Light soap opera. And I was just in the living room with my little brother. And all of a sudden he said, "Titus, there's some guys running across grandma's yard." So I jump up, I go to the door. By the time I got to the door, the guys had guns. This is broad daylight in a residential area. But both of them got guns, I back up. Now when I back up into the house, they tell us to lay down on the floor. My little brother immediately lays down. Me, street smarts, the environment I grew up in, I'm looking at your face. Y'all, we're looking at each other face to face. You're gonna kill us. So I'm not gonna lay down. Please, I got a bunch of money outside of my car. They look at each other. I said, I got a ton of money in my car. You can have it. I said, oh, let me get some out of my glove box. Now, trauma. I should be panicking, fearing for my life. No, I got a 9mm laid between my seat. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to get this 9mm. And I'm going to grab it and I'm going to spin around and I'm going to go out in a blaze. I'm going to shoot them and they're going to shoot me and they're going to know my name. They're going to say, he went out like a G. Because that's what they do. That's what you do. I open the car door. I can't make this up. I reach to go between my seat. He says, you looking for this? He puts the gun to the back of my head and says, there's no money, is it? I said, yeah, it is, it is, it is, it is. I don't know where a crackhead comes up and says, hey, what are you guys doing? And we all just turn and look. And I take off. I'm running. And it's gunfire. I'm hit, but I'm gone. This is gonna get you. What I'm getting ready to tell you is the definition of trauma, the numbness. I run all the way across the street behind a neighbor's house. I'm standing there. I look down. Blood is pouring out of my left hip. And I'm looking and it's quiet. And I'm looking and I see my BMW door open and he's trying to steal my car now. Oh, he tried to steal my car. I look around. Gotta find me a weapon to defend my car. And I begin to go back across the street to this guy that got my gun and his gun, and he's in my car. Listen to that. Listen to the numbness, the insanity. I got to the car. I said, you beep. When I said it, he immediately grabbed the gun and pointed it. I immediately was coming in the car with the center block. I hit it. I turned to run. Gun goes off. And I fall. And I'm trying to get up. Houston, legs are not operating. I look back over my shoulder. He's out of the car. He walks over, he shoots again, he shoots again, he shoots again. And all I can hear is stop moving. Now I know the Spirit of the Lord said, stop moving. I wake up. It's a dream. I was dreaming. I was dreaming. Nothing. And because this is real. I'm not dreaming. I'm 24. I can't live like this. I don't want to live like this. Morphine, numbing the pain, remember? That's the only way I know. I numb the pain. Now they're not giving me the button anymore. They're giving me pills. I bet you if I get enough of them. Took a pill, stuck it under my pillow, took a pill. Oh, I got about 50 of them now. I'm gonna do it tonight. Wake me up. Oh, the nurse standing there. Baby. Yes, ma'am. What is this? I look at her hands. She got the pills. And I started crying. I was like, she said, baby, you can't do this. I said, but you don't know what kind of life I'm gonna live. I can't walk. And she got stern. She said, you have no right. It's not your life. Whose life? She said, it's God's life. He gave it to you. She said, I said, I don't believe in all of that stuff. She said, well, you should. She said, give him a chance. She said, I can only stop you now. I'm not gonna let you do this. She said, but this is God's life. She said, you have no idea. If you do this, do you know how many people's lives you might touch? How many lives you might change? Do you know who Jesus is? That he died for you and he loves you? And I'm looking at this woman. No. You're telling me to believe in Jesus. Where was Jesus when my friend was killing that guy? Where was Jesus when he was being beaten? When he was 11? Where was Jesus when that girl decided to commit suicide? We was in elementary. And where's Jesus now, ma'am? I can't walk. So needless to say, I didn't do it. I left there. I ended up going into rehab, and the day I went into rehab, I saw that lady, August 29th, 1995. She led me to Christ. And that's what started putting me on the path to understanding and unraveling the trauma and the pain.
We just act as though it's like so unusual. And it's the most like basic question is like, should I continue fighting? Should I continue staying alive? Should I continue working towards something? Or should I give up? That's something that we all have to face at some point in our lives.
I think that there's great hope around this issue. We've got many wonderful examples of people in our society who are now coming forward and sharing their story of hope and how they've, made it from a point of being very suicidal and feeling like life had no worth to finding a life worth living. And all of us have a life worth living.
I'm a huge advocate for suicide because I'm a survivor of 7 times, and I still got a chance to get better. I literally got chances by doctors, psychiatrists, and counselors, and also the police. So many times I got tired of it. Why are these people keep trying to help me? Don't they obviously see I'm trying to die? Don't they obviously see that I do not want to go further? It does not matter. And I told my sister one day, yelling at her, I told her that I'm a broken person. No one loves broken people. And you know what she said? I love you. It's time to love yourself. And if it weren't for her saying that, I would have never seen the fact that people love me. And the option wasn't suicide anymore. My sister loves me. My mother loves me. I got people who love me now. I needed the love and support from other people. But first, I had to be willing to know that someone else is trying to love me. And I needed to let them in.
You don't have to have a degree in psychology. You don't have to have all these things. You just have to have the ability to provide somebody with hope. Hope is telling someone that you're going to stick through something hard with them and then being prepared to help that person get connected to help.
We have emergency services as well as outpatient therapy. There's a wide continuum of mental health services that are available.
It is definitely a community issue. It takes the school system, it takes the faith-based community, it takes the hospital system, it takes all of us working together if we're ever going to reduce the rates of suicide and to let people know that there are folks out there who care about them.
So all our barbers attend mental health first aid. I mean, the barbers are the frontline soldiers. We get the rawness, we get the raw experience of the clients, of the community, and so we have to be equipped. Personally, I've seen young men who've dealt with depression in the state of suicidal. And if they could just get some word of encouragement or someone who just cares, you will see their spirit just go up. And if you could add that hope with some information, I mean, their life will change. Their life will change.
I think as people, we are designed to need other people. There's so much relief, so much connection and community that people find in letting down their guard.
Hey guys! How's everybody?
The first choice that we had to make was we can have the choice to bury this, or we can go all out and let God use our story in this for good.
Thanks so much for coming and spending some time listening to my story. I'm super excited to be sharing it with you guys. As you know, our family has spent a lot of time processing over the last 18 months and trying to figure out how we use our story to help others, and went through the grieving process of, yes, I was angry and
are angry.
So yeah, the process was hard. It went from who am I angry at and how has this happened to, okay, it has happened, and how do we make sure that good comes out of this?
I feel like what Tyler, if he were still here, would do, what he essentially wanted to do and couldn't do and could not do himself.
Yes.
That you're able to carry on for.
Yes, I think Tyler would be really proud. I think he was so selfless that it's exactly what he would want.
So I would challenge people in our communities with good intention and wisdom, just find out what can you do to help. These people need help. I needed help.
I think everyone has the ability to be a front linesman. I mean, at some point, at some part in your life, you are on the front line. So I just want to encourage everybody to just, pick up your equipment and fight the good fight.
I'm a licensed therapist at this facility where I was treated for a suicide attempt. I mean, it doesn't get much more full circle than that. That's why I know that recovery is possible.
And years ago is when I thought about suicide. And I still think about it now. But I know that I have to keep going, and that there's tons of muscles in my body that tell me that today is not the day you're ending.
The journey has just been a roller coaster. I think it's little glimpses of happiness, the happiness that we had, start to come back. I mean, good can come out of this and will come out of this. So I know that God loves me. I know that God loved Tyler and loves him today. And I can choose joy because of that.
You might be struggling, facing so many obstacles, but you're not crazy either. There are people out there who have felt like this, and they've lived on. And I am with you. You can do this.
You have no idea how many lives you're gonna touch. I promise you. I promise you. I bet my wheelchair that if you just choose to live, there's someone or someone's depending on you to make it. Is gonna need to hear your story on how you got over, on how you made it. Please allow God, number one, and allow someone or someone's to journey with you through the pain, the trauma, and the mental health. God bless you.
Again, as we've been going through these videos, we've also been sharing some thoughts from those within our own church as part of the voice that we've been talking about. And I just want to share some things that were sent to us this week from those who are sitting around you. That represents also things that sit around your community and your family. One shared, suicidal tendencies affect me personally every day. It can be something small that someone has said that hit me the wrong way, to not feeling that anyone needs me around. First time I had a plan to take my life, it was after being bullied repeatedly by my daughter's father shortly after she was born. So along with bullying, I was suffering from postpartum depression and just not feeling like I was good enough to take care of my child. I'm very lucky that I didn't get the chance to act out my plan because God has since blessed me with children and a very loving husband that stands by me no matter what comes our way. There have been other instances in which I did have to admit myself to the hospital in order to get my mental health taken care of, and I still have days that I don't want to exist. I, however, know that God I however know that it isn't God's plan for me, so I call my counselor or my husband if he isn't home. I also pray a lot more than I used to. Something I would like others to know in regard to suicidal tendencies is that it can run in families, especially if other mental health issues run in the family. Also, that someone that's contemplating suicide can look and act like nothing is wrong, so listen if they are talking to you, because something as simple as the quote, "I don't want to be around anymore," can mean more than just those words. Many times, suicidal tendencies can be associated with depression, anxiety, PTSD, or other mental health diseases, but it can also be related to bullying or a combination of both. Yet another shared this. It is hard to organize my thoughts on this topic as it takes me back to a very dark time in my life. And as I read this, listen through on how important it is for the church to be able to be there for folks versus the damage that the church can do. My second husband was a wolf in sheep's clothing, very abusive, mostly emotionally, but always threatening physical abuse. I was sexually and physically abused as a child, and I became a fearful and timid woman. He also was abused as a child and became a very angry person. As his relationship and position in the church grew, so did his controlling behavior with me. Church members did not believe that he was abusive because he was so nice and popular and a real talker. When he found out that I was researching what it would take for me to go to nursing school, he announced to the Sunday school class that we were getting a divorce. When I got 6 inches of my hair cut and it was still down to the middle of my back, he refused to acknowledge my presence or speak to me for 3 months. When he shattered glass all around me and pinned me against the wall while twisting my arm, I called the police. When they came, he calmly told them he didn't know what was the matter with me, that I went berserk on him. It was his word against mine, and I was told that if they got another call, they would arrest both of us, and I needed to either leave or work things out. I suffered rape in my marriage to him. I could write a book full of examples, but you get the idea. I felt trapped, like I had no way out. A church member told me maybe if I didn't act like such a victim that things would get better. I was also told I would go to hell if I divorced my husband. I went for counseling, and the counselor was from the church that we were going to. During one of the sessions, he got up and he walked out and refused to ever go with me again. I sunk into a deep depression. Although I never attempted suicide or had a plan for it, I just didn't want to live anymore. The fight was too hard, and I had grown weak. What I have gained through all of this is more compassion for others finding themselves in the same dark place I once was. I have also learned that sometimes there are absolutely no signs that a person is contemplating suicide. I unofficially attained a reputation to talking to girl teenagers at the church I was going to. One by one, they would come to me, and we would talk through their problems. I wasn't trained for counseling, but I was a caring person whom the Spirit of the living God resided in. Sometimes I felt inadequate for the reputation that I had, but one Sunday, one of the girls came to me and told me what had happened after the last time we talked. She said that she had planned to kill herself that night. However, she kept hearing the last words that I had said to her, "It's going to be okay, kid." And she started repeating it to herself over and over, and she just couldn't do it. I saw that God is always the answer to darkness. I know it wasn't any skill on my part. He had used me as his instrument, disregarding my inadequacies. Just be there for hurting people. Be present for them. Learn about what research says about suicide, but know that there are those who suffer that don't fit into any kind of clinical categories. Surround yourself with good people and hold on to God, your Father in heaven, and don't blame him. It's not in his nature to want to destroy his own children. There's a third story that I want to share with you as well today from a buddy of mine. He came to me as soon as we announced this series and the topics that we were going to be talking about, and shared that he thought that it was time for him to be able to share from his heart as well. So I'd like to bring him up. Dalton? I won't make you do big eyes. Thanks. I won't make you dance. Go.
All right. Hey.
Hey. Yeah, just keep it close to.
Okay.
Okay. They gotta be able to hear you on the podcast stuff.
All right.
You have something? Do you want me to help, or do you want to start and we'll go from there?
I'll start and I'll go. I guess
Okay.
I'll share my experience and my story. I'll try to keep myself together because my family is here, so it's a little bit harder. I guess my story started a little bit before we got back from Thailand. I had never felt like I couldn't do something in my life, I've always felt like I could find a way to do something that I wanted to do until I went to Thailand. They kept asking me to do stuff that I wasn't good at or I didn't know how. And I would look around me and I would see my wife thriving and excellent, but I couldn't figure out why I couldn't do it. So we ended up coming home because of me, actually. And when I got home, it was hard for me. And I decided that I wanted to shut God out. You know, here I am, a missionary, couldn't make it. So I felt like God left me. Gosh, it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be.
You're doing good, baby. You're doing good.
So a couple months went by. You know, I felt like I failed everybody at the time. I still do most days. Give me 2 seconds. So, but I felt like I had failed mostly everybody. So 2 months after coming back, I decided it was my time to go. Shoot. So I decided I'd go to church like normal, be this normal person. You know, I sit in the back. I hide from most people. And then when I was going to go home, I was going to move on. It was time. Shoot. All right. It was time to move on. But something happened during the sermon that the small voice that I was trying to ignore or run away from, telling me it was time to tell somebody. So I did probably the hardest thing I've ever done. I told Pastor Tom, I said, hey, I said, I don't know what's going on. I said, but today was my day to go, but something inside me told me to tell somebody. So I did. And then we had to bring in my wife and kind of talk through it. So it's basically kind of where I'm at today, I guess. I need a little help here.
Well, you got it.
All right. But, so I had to tell Pastor Tom what was going on. Nobody wants to admit that they're broken. A lot of the videos said people don't want to tell nobody. It's true. We don't want to tell anybody. Because then people look at you like they can't talk to you or they don't understand you. And you're like fragile, like a piece of glass. So we worked through a lot of my issues. I still have trouble today, most days. But the biggest fact was we put in, I guess, pieces in my life to help me make it to the next day. Man, this sucks.
Well, you said you needed help, and then you just kind of kept on going. So
I know.
Yeah.
Because I do need help, but
don't we all, brother?
Yeah. So we met this week to talk about it. The reason I felt like I should share was Pastor Tom had that series, I forget what it was called, but something that you have to do is build relationship with people. I'm not very good at building relationships with people because I like to keep to myself. But when you have suicidal tendencies or suicidal thoughts, keeping to yourself is probably the worst thing that you can do. So that's all I got.
It's been about a year since our first talk. And Dalt's been doing incredible as far as committed to counseling, working with medication, taking and growing, and being able to communicate with his wife and with others. Not always perfect, not every day. Some days are tougher than others, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that if I get a call from Dalt, that I answer it, and there's nothing else that's more important in that moment, because sometimes we have our good days and bad days. He's got an incredible employer that works really well with some of the ups and the downs with that, so we're thankful for that.
Yeah.
But I will say this, even though you're not going to be able to do it probably right now, unless if you really, really want to get gutsy, if you look around this room right now, you're not going to see a judgment eye. You're going to see love. You're going to see commitment. You're going to see family that loves you very much. You see a bunch of people that are no longer going to let you hide in the back corner.
Yeah. So some of the stuff I guess we talked about this week that I kind of want to hit on as far as moving forward.
Okay.
We got to make sure that we get like people in our lives that will speak truth and love. Because I forget who said it, but one of the guys in the video, shoot, I forget exactly what he said, but basically that in our own minds, there is no reason. We can't explain why we feel the way that we do. A lot of it is made up, I guess. Some way I can explain it. Well, not made up, but, you know. But when we have people like Pastor Tom or Katie, well, I have Katie, but whoever you have. But when we have people in our lives that will speak truth and reason, it makes it a little bit more easier. I can give an example. The other day, I was really struggling, knowing that I had to come up here and speak, and I didn't want to be in front of everybody. I didn't want to be in front of everybody, so I hurried up and sent Katie a text, and I said, hey, I'm not doing well today. And she kindly answered me back, spoke that she knows what I'm going through. You know, for her, it looks a little bit different than me. She struggles with stuff, but she's able to reason with things. So she kindly explained to me that, like, you have to realize the good things that happen. Yeah, you're having trouble at reasoning with why you feel the way that you feel, but we're working through it and we're getting better. And just that little bit kind of helped me make it through the day. We need to, Pastor Tom talks about it all the time, we need to have community with us, because when you have suicidal tendencies or suicidal thoughts, when you sit in loneliness, it grows. You can't do it yourself. I've tried, so it doesn't work. It just tends to grow bigger and bigger because you can't see past what's going on. So, yeah, I guess that's it, really.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel good. It's hard.
You look a little weak.
I am a little weak. Not physically, but
soft.
mentally.
What are you saying?
So.
Do me a favor, you guys give him a round of applause and make sure he gets 3. Make sure he gets 3 hugs before he gets to the chair somehow. Hold him if you have to. Monty? One of the things that's kind of incredible about Dalton's story is when we sat down the other day and we were talking about this a little bit more. I probably should have just snagged it from him because he had it with him. He started out by saying he really didn't have anything to share. And so I said, well, just what would you say for those who are struggling and those who want to give compassion to people who are struggling? And so then he just kept talking. I kept writing notes, and by then I had an entire tablet of paper full of stuff that Dalton had for people. I was like, look how far you come in a year and a half, a year. A lot of times we look at the journey we still have left. but we got to celebrate what's there. So we're going to just kind of rifle through these. Again, for our note takers on how to help people who are struggling, or if you're struggling, some things for you. We do want to be a little time sensitive for a couple things we still have, but keep in mind 80% of this came straight from Dalton. So Monica, if you would, for those who are struggling.
Okay, so this.
Well, I don't want you on. You got it?
It's on.
No, it's not.
Oh, there's 2 buttons. Sneaky. Hello. Okay. For those of us that struggle, I am one of those people as well, although it doesn't happen very often. It's important to know that the suicide hotline is available 24/7, 365.
You put that up, sir?
If you or someone that you know is having suicidal thoughts or is really struggling, this is a great resource for them. 3 o'clock in the morning, I mean, if somebody called me, I wouldn't wake up. I just don't wake up when I hear noise. But there's always somebody at the suicide hotline that can help you with whatever you're going through. So I encourage you all to note this down or put it in your phone or whatever is easiest for you, so that if you come across anybody or you yourself need it, it's always available. The other thing to note, and this is true of all the stories we've heard and the people in the video, is that suicidal thoughts don't happen in a bubble. It's always like a symptom of something else. So it's important to be able to find out what the original or the underlying issue is. For me, it's depression. So I know that I need to work on depression with my counselor and making things better and seeing things in the way they are versus the way I think they are, because you have a lot of errored thoughts when you're dealing with these things, and that's what can lead to the suicidal thoughts, because you think, just like the one counselor said, your scope for problem solving narrows. That's about thinking errors, and your counselor can help you move on from those kinds of things. It's also important to lean into community, which I'm really bad at. One of the things that happens with both with the suicidal thoughts and with depression is something called isolation. Of course, you know what that word means, but you pull away from everybody and you don't really want people to know what's going on, and you feel like you're a burden, so you don't want to tell people, et cetera. And so you pull away from everybody, and eventually you're left by yourself. And just like Dalton said, when you're by yourself, that's when it gets bigger and it keeps growing. So it's important to be able to reach out to those people and whoever that is and let them know. I'm really lucky. My mom's a therapist and has been for 40 years. So she's somebody who's in my life that I can say, hey, something's going on, and she'll jump. She's also the person that gives me that reason and truth. She's my Katie. So when I'm having these thoughts or having issues, she is really good at pointing out what's true. And for me, the biggest truth is God's love for me. And any time that I have felt this way, my way of getting past it is to think about how God sees me versus how I see myself, and also the people around me that would be affected, because everybody's going to be affected by this, even if I'm beyond that. It's important to get into counseling, and if you need it, take the medication. So many times in the church, I feel like the attitude is, if you pray harder, or if you trust in God more, this thing will go away. Well, that's not true with diabetes, so why would it be true with mental health issues? So you have to really be able to reach out and say to a counselor, I need help. And if they say, take this medication, take the medication. It doesn't have to be forever. You may not be on it forever. It may be a temporary thing. It may be a lifetime thing. But either way, you've got to do what they say, because they're the experts and they're there to help you get through this.
And communicate as you go. I like this note here is straight from Dalton, that the medicine helps keep me level, and counseling lets me express what I feel and how to learn how to express how I feel. Mm-hmm. And I think those are two important truths.
Absolutely. The other thing to think about is it doesn't go away overnight. It took a long time for these thoughts to start popping up, and they become part of who you are in a way. It becomes habit. So it takes a while for those habits to go away. So don't think that it's going to go away overnight. Be ready to have to fight a little bit and take some time. But you can do it because now you've told people and you've got people on your side. There's no easy way to take care of this.
There's no easy button. That was Dalton's phrase.
Oh, my
He's
bad.
thinking
There's no
about that
easy button.
Office Depot Easy
Oh,
button thing, but
yeah.
there's no easy button.
Oh,
But
that
there
would be
is
so
hope in the
nice.
future. That's Dalton's.
Yeah, there is hope in the future,
smart.
and sometimes you have to get that from other people. Those people that are speaking truth into your life can give you that hope and give you a future. And of course, God's word. He's got a lot of promises in there, and I believe that He will fulfill those promises, even if I don't always feel that way. I know that it's true. It's also important to get a counselor that challenges you. One of the things that I'm part of an anxiety and depression group on Facebook. And one of the things that I've noticed about a lot of the people on there is that they think that the first counselor that they get is the one that they're stuck with if they don't get along. And that's not true. If you didn't like your doctor or your mechanic or pastor, you can get rid of them. Exactly. So if you go to see a counselor and the two of you don't gel, that's okay. That's not going to insult the counselor. It's not going to make them feel like they're not good at their job. They know that not everybody gels. So if that's an issue, go find someone else that works better with you. It's important to be comfortable with that person. And like I mentioned, kind of touched on before, the fact that your feelings will lie to you. When my feelings are telling me, okay, so you know your left brain is your logic side and your right brain is the feeling side, more or less. So when my right brain is telling me, oh, you're not good enough, and you failed at this, and you're never going to find a job, and you're always going to be single, and all the other things that go through my head, the right or the left brain is the one who knows what's true. Whatever happens is God's will. God is bigger than any of these problems that I have. Not meaning He's going to solve them. I mean that He's more important than those things. And you have to be able to have that truth come through, even though your feelings are lying. You may think that once you're gone, your problems are over because you're not in pain anymore. And on one hand, that's true. But all those people that you were trying not to be a burden to, you've now made incredibly, incredibly sad for who knows how long. You definitely have affected them. And that's probably the number one, maybe number two reason that I have never been able to do it is I couldn't do that to my mom. I couldn't do it to her. Just like with the anxiety and depression, you need to have coping mechanisms in place. And it's important that you put those in place when you're in a good spot, when you're feeling your most normal, your most upbeat or whatever. Come up with a plan. Know what you look like, the things that you say, the things that you feel, and say, okay, when I feel this is the trigger. When I feel this, I need to do this. When I start saying, what's the point, I know that I need to talk to my mom. That's my phrase. If you need to call someone, call them. If you need to text them, text them. And one of the surprises that I have found over the years is that people don't react the way you're afraid they're going to react. You often think that they're going to be like, ugh, here's another one, another person I have to deal with that's got more problems. But that's not how anybody reacts. They always react with caring, with kindness. They love you. They want to help you. And it's for some reason, it's still a surprise to me. But that's the way it is. People love you. It's hard to see that when you're in the midst of it, but they do. The having a plan for your safety is important. My plan has been to tell my doctor, don't ever, ever prescribe me sleeping pills. I had him put it in my file so that I know that that's never going to come from them, so that's never an option for me. Don't ever have them in the house, etc. So whatever your thing is that you have to put into place for safety, do that thing. And that's part of making the plan when you're in a good place. The other thing that I wanted to share was we talked about the thought errors. Some of the big ones, in my opinion, that go along with depression and suicidal thoughts and tendencies are called magnification and mental filtering. The magnification is where you take something little and you make it huge. Some look that you saw somebody give, and now all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, that person hates me, I did something wrong, and that can spiral down into I'm a burden to everyone and I don't want to be here anymore and the pain is too much. So magnifying things, it's good to remind yourself, you know what? They probably didn't mean anything by that look. They were probably thinking about lunch. So taking away that magnification. The other one is mental filtering, and I do this a lot. When you forget about the things that you have done well and only think about the things that you have done badly or things bad that have happened to you versus the good. My mom has pointed out to me more than once when I do that, I'll have like a whole week of really great things that have happened for the business I'm trying to start, and a whole, great thing of time that I had with my friends. And then one little thing will happen. I'll be like, that's it. My whole week is terrible. It's been ruined and I can't do it anymore. And she'll be like, yeah, but look at all the good stuff that happened. And I have to physically be reminded about those things sometimes. You want Wednesday night?
No. Let me do my half. For those who have compassion, just a few things that throw out your way to consider. Again, a lot of these came from Dalton, as well as my consultation with Monica and with others. If someone tells you they're thinking about killing themselves, don't freak out. I understand the freak out. I've had friends say things to me that just makes your stomach just turn upside down, or someone says that they have set a date before and they decide not to. It could be a little over concerning, but don't be afraid also to communicate. Like I'm really kind of scared right now in this moment. I'm scared for you. That worries me because I love you. Know your limits. Again, like with the testimony we had earlier with the young lady who is now advising teenage girls, that's awesome. That's awesome. But also they were saying, I know that I'm not educated in this area, so I can meet them where they're at and then help them get to the next person they need to talk to. I can get them to Pastor Tom, I can get them to a counselor, we can get them some additional help, especially important pleas with teenagers. You guys talk about suicide a lot. And you often go to your peers instead of your parents or instead of somebody that has life experience. And that's okay for a first step. But understand your friends have no more life experience than you do. And you don't want to be in a situation where a friend's telling you, well, cutting's bad for you, but, it works. And then what was the next thing she said? Then I lost my friend, she killed herself. Like there's bad advice that comes out easily from our peers. So make sure you know what your limits are. Seeing that person on the street, just like we said with the Good Samaritan, bandage them, put them on a donkey, take them to the next person that can help. Cutting or burning, Dalton and I was asking him some questions about this. I was asking Monica some questions on this. We had different thoughts, different experiences, different lacks of experience, whatever the case would be. But cutting and burning, I didn't realize they were going to bring up in the video. I watched those with you guys. I like to experience stuff with you instead of like me sitting back there going, yeah, I heard this before. I didn't realize they were going to be cutting and burning, but I was kind of playing with the kid. Last week when we were talking about addiction, we were talking about alcohol and marijuana and pornography as gateways to addiction. And from everything I know, working with youth for the last 25 plus years, cutting and burning have the same similar traits as suicidal thoughts. It's trying to control the pain. It's trying to let the pain out. When those things come, if you find out that your child or someone that you love is cutting, does not mean that they're going to kill themselves tonight, but it should definitely raise some flags. It's an unhealthy behavior. That's a gateway with the same thoughts that lead to something that might be more permanent. Be a support team member. What support team member? Again, just be part of their team. As I said when we were talking earlier, when Dalton calls, I know that there's probably something going on. No, that's my part. That doesn't mean I am everything to him. I'm not his savior. None of us are each other's saviors, but we are being used by the Savior to be able to be there for one another. Try to understand where they're coming from. Don't try to treat them as if they're odd or pull away from them. If you pull away from them, that's just compounding the situation again. They can look normal but struggling inside, as repeated. Get the right tools to them of what they need and be willing to go with them. Counseling, the hospital, to the doctor, to someone who has more experience than you do, to the church, to a support group. Don't be afraid of emergency help. If your friend is in an emergency situation, don't be afraid of emergency help. I think there's even more stigmatism on someone going to the hospital when they're suicidal than anything else that we talk about in mental health, and I don't understand why. If there's an emergency, get them the emergency help. Don't treat them like they're weird. That's the thing that kind of kills me, that keeps repeating. When we go back to phrases like, why can't you just get over this? Or I have a tough day too, and I'm fine, and I get through it. Why don't you just have a beer and relax? Those type of mentality are just damaging, and they're wrong, and they're belittling, and you're in no way, shape, or form supporting. All of us are different, and we will have our different places and different times that we need this kind of help. Giving them space can be the worst thing. Go past, how are you? Go deeper. If you see somebody that looks in bad shape, how are you? I'm doing fine. Whew, I'm glad they didn't bring up anything. No, seriously, how are you doing? It doesn't look good. Last week you were really struggling where things at.
That's one of the things I've noticed about the American culture, and other people have talked about it having come here, is that we say, how are you, as part of our greeting and don't really want to know how somebody is. So that's why you have to say it again. I'm not just saying this as part of my greeting. I'm saying this because I really want to know how you are.
Right. Here's the thing. Don't just say something. Just reach out. I know people say to me, well, I just feel uncomfortable, or what if I put a spot? What if they die tonight and tomorrow you have to wonder, what if I said something? That's the gauge we're working with. Is there everything that I could have done? I can't imagine losing somebody and thinking I should have said something, how that weighs on us. And some of us know what that feels like personally, because it's very uncomfortable. It's not comfortable for them, it's not comfortable for you. But we're brothers and sisters in Christ, representing Jesus in this world, in love and in truth, period. And to hesitate. Even if it's just to give them the 800 number and sit by him and dial the phone for him, do it. Do it. Thank you, Monica. Leave.
Is that a Do you want this?
Huh?
Still?
No, you can shut that off and do that stuff. I love you, Monica. I love you, Monica. Do me a favor and grab your Bibles and go to Psalms 34. Psalms 34. We'll put that up on the screen for you. I'm sure it's probably already there. No, and Sarah. And Psalms will probably come back up again when we're talking about depression. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I love the Psalms when it comes to our toughest of days. I can share with you the testimony of me sitting at a dining room table when I decided that life wasn't worth it anymore, and that it was one psalm that kept me from killing myself when all things had fallen apart. The reason I love the Psalms is that a lot of times, unfortunately, not this particular one, but you still see kind of the flow of it. David is a guy that's really honest about his emotions, and a lot of his Psalms start out with, everything blows, everything's just falling apart, I am completely overtaken and there's no way I can survive it. And then he starts holding on to the promises of God, and when he starts saying, but you are my tower, you are my fortress, the next thing you know, he bursts into praise. And that's why I think it might come up a little bit deeper when we get to depression here in a few weeks. But in this particular psalm, I was reading it this week, and it brought to mind a situation and a truth that I want to make sure we walk out of here with, on why it's so important to point each other to Jesus, to point ourselves to Jesus, to have Scripture around us, to take that bookmark that Miss Alding makes of the Scriptures that's in your bulletin. Whatever it takes to have truth around you, take it and put it on poster boards and putting it in your room or in your car, whatever the case may be. There's a truth here that I think is so important that I want to make sure that we don't miss. Starting in Psalm 34, verse 1, David starts out with praise. He says, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and he delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. I want to jump to verse 8, where it says, O taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. O fear the Lord, you, his saints, for those who fear him have no lack. Verse 11, Come, O children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. What man is there who desires life and loves many days that he may see good? Verse 14, Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace. Pursue it. I find all of this truth very encouraging. And I think in my darkest of days, it would almost be like, yeah, that works for everybody else with me. That's when David was in a good place, and I'm not in a good place. That's when everything seems to make sense. That's where he's not going through a situation where the spouse is being abusive. He's not going through a situation where he can't pay the bills. He's not going through a situation where I'm dealing with bullying at the school. He's not going through the toughness. That is easy to do when things are falling apart. Verse 15, The eyes of the Lord are towards his righteous, and his ears towards their cry. Verse 17, When the righteous cry for help, The Lord hears and delivers them out of all their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted, and he saves the crushed in spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. He keeps all his bones, not one of them is broken. Affliction will slay the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be condemned. The Lord redeems the life of his servants. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. He's not writing the psalm to everybody who has it perfect. He's writing to those who are groaning and falling apart. Let me share with you one last testimony. Once upon a time, if you've not been here very long, we had an associate pastor here. His name is Brent Longstreth, good friend of mine. And Brent was here for several years as, again, the associate pastor, and he was being mentored to be able to start a church someday, which a couple years ago he started in Delaware called Hands of Hope with us, helping them out a little bit, and I've been really privileged to be a small part of their ministry. While Dan was here, he had a lot of his family here with us as well, his wife and his daughters, his brother Dan, his brother Mike, and his wife, a lot of the family that was here that became part of his plant team when they went to start Hands of Hope in Delaware. I was actually going through and found just a little bit of video, and Scott, this is why I was asking if you could just maybe do halfway, but if Sarah can share it with us. Here it comes, there it is. This is them singing at Hands of Hope about a year ago. This is Dan on the right and his brother Mike on the left. And just say, give us a little bit more volume there, Scott, if you would. How many people know this song? Everybody raise their hand? Okay, you guys know it. I love this voice. We'll take it up some on the voice. You ready? Here it comes. Such great truth to the song. Amen? It's great truth. And when everything's falling apart, to be able to lean in. And Dan was a music guy, but he never really liked to sing a lot. But watch this. He's going about to bust in. And make sure you listen to the words he has. We'll even take it up a little bit more for a solo. Scott, if you bring the volume down, we can keep the video going if you want, but we'll go ahead and bring it all the way down. Like I said, this video is from about a year ago. First time I saw it was about 6 months ago. When I saw it is when I was helping Brent and Leslie plan Dan's funeral. Dan, again, great friend, loved having him here for years, loved his dedication also with Hands of Hope. And we'll go ahead and bring this back up. We'll take it back down a little bit. Dan knew the truth, and Dan focused on the truth often. Dan had anxiety. Dan had depression. Dan had his bouts of struggle with addiction. He had a tough life, and even his friends struggled. Dan and Brent and another gentleman by the name of Dan were the ones that did all this construction work, at least 95% of it here at the church. And only Brent is still with us today, as we lost his friend Dan to addiction as well. When we focus on truth, it changes everything. And then when we lose the sight on the truth, it was after church one Sunday when Brent and Leslie came home, and Dan's car was parked out in front of their house. And that generally meant that Dan did not wake up in time for church or something had come up, and so he decided to come over and hang out at their house and have lunch. So they pulled in, they went inside the house and went looking and couldn't find Dan in the house any place, no matter how much you called. And so he decided, well, maybe Dan's sitting out in the car waiting for us and didn't see us pull in. So he went out to the car to find his little brother dead from a single gunshot wound. And from what we know now, that there was a strong likelihood that as soon as he saw his brother's car coming around the corner is when he took his life. His brother was always his caregiver, and he wanted his brother to be the one to find him and no one else. Brent did a lot for Dan, and so did the whole family. And I'm sure from talking to Dan in the past that he kind of understood some of that stuff of, I just don't want to be a burden for anybody anymore. And I can tell you from walking the path with the family, no one's going to look at you in judgment. No one should be treating each other like a broken glass. All of us should be pointing ourselves to the truth that when you are broken, when you are crushed in your spirit, when you are afflicted, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me. And let us exalt his name together. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Oh, fear the Lord, for you his saints, for those who fear him have no lack. Come, O children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. What man is there who desires life and loves many days that he may see good? Encourage each other to the truth, and the truth is Jesus Christ. When we go into the darkness, it grows, and Satan wants nothing more than to have his way with you, but you are his child.